Sadly, it's not uncommon to turn on the news and find out a fighter has been arrested. From drunken brawls to kidnapping, we've just about seen it all. But something else we've gotten used to is who to expect that type of behavior from. There are a ton of fighters out there who are incredible guys who crush it in the cage, but then are normal, stable guys who love their families and serve their communities.
The nicest mofo
What?
belt.
Are you kidding me right now?
Is a very
So how did a stand-up guy with a great record end up all over the news with the headlines, quote, "Cain Velasquez has no respect for human life"? Today we're going to look at how Velasquez went from a respected fighter to a guy who can't make bail and shot down a man in public after a violent car chase. The truth behind the story is shocking, but first, let's rewind back to the early 80s. Cain Velasquez was born on July 28, 1982 in Salinas, California. His father had moved to the United States several years earlier to pursue the American dream, and that is where he met his wife, Velasquez's mother. After the two married, Velasquez's father was able to attain American citizenship, and the two of them went on to have 3 children, including Cain. Velasquez went on to grow up in Arizona, but stayed connected to his Mexican roots. He would cross the border frequently to visit family, and he took his pride in his culture into his professional career by carrying a Mexican flag with him every time he had a fight. Inspired by his father's work ethic, Velasquez was never one to shy away from hard work, which became evident at a very young age. Velasquez showed off his impressive skills as a wrestler at Kafa High School, where he graduated with a remarkable 110-10 record. You would think being a wrestling titan would have been enough to focus on for the young Velasquez, but apparently that wasn't keeping him busy enough, because he also played linebacker on his high school football team and was football captain. His clear focus, hard work, and determination made it obvious that he was destined to be a star. After high school, Velasquez's career accelerated at a rapid rate. He spent a year getting an associate degree at Iowa Central Community College, where he won the 2002 NJCAA National Championship in the heavyweight division. Perhaps seeking something even more elite, the following year, he became an official Sun Devil when he joined the wrestling team at Arizona State University. It was clearly a good move, as Velasquez kept on getting better and better, winning 2 Pac-10 conference titles and twice achieving All-American status during his time at ASU. He came in 5th at the NCAA championships in 2005 and stepped up a level to come in 4th the following year. In 2005, he was named the Pac-10 Wrestler of the Year. How could a man who was shining so bright get to the violent acts he committed just a few months ago? When Velasquez graduated from ASU, there was no indication that one day he would be chasing a man down with a gun. Velasquez graduated with a degree in education and an 86-17 record. After graduation, he turned to the exciting world of MMA, where he immediately got a reputation as one of the best fighters in the business. Velasquez made his MMA debut on October 7, 2006 in Strikeforce, Tank vs. Buentello. He defeated Jesse Fujarsik by TKO in the first round, an impressive introduction into the MMA world, and he was just getting started. In interviews, Velasquez credited much of his success to his training at the American Kickboxing Academy, which he had joined soon after graduating from ASU. He earned a brown belt in Guerrilla Jiu-Jitsu and a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and trained with prolific coaches such as Dave Camarillo, Javier Mendez, and Leandro Vieira. Don't get it twisted, AKA had critics, such as UFC president Dana White, who thought they were too relentless with their athletes. But the proof that their method worked was pretty undeniable. Velasquez ended up on a 9-fight winning streak and quickly cemented himself as a formidable opponent in the heavyweight division. Velasquez was dominating in his professional life, but what about his personal life? Had his relationships with his parents been bad? Could he not get along with women? Was something amiss that would lead to him ending up in prison? Well, spoiler alert, it doesn't seem like he's ever had any issues with the ladies, although he's been a committed man for a very long time. Velasquez went public with his relationship with Michelle Borquez in 2007, and they have been inseparable ever since. She became a fixture at his fights, and 2 years after making things official, they had their first child together, a little girl. 2 years later, the pair got married back in Velasquez's home state. Their daughter even got to take part in the wedding. In 2018, the couple welcomed their second child, this time a boy. Both Cain and Michelle's Instagram feeds are filled with family pictures out and about enjoying life with each other. They look happy and normal. None of them could have known that their lives were about to take a turn for the worse. But let's get back to Velasquez's UFC career, where he continued to shine bright. Velasquez had been working on a stand-up, which was demonstrated when he went face-to-face with MMA icon Brock Lesnar and defeated him via ground and pound in the first round. This victory gave Velasquez his first UFC heavyweight championship. This wouldn't be a story about Cain Velasquez without mentioning Junior Dos Santos. The two had their first fight on November 12, 2011, where Dos Santos served Velasquez his first defeat. The fight was an exciting one for MMA lovers, as both men were on winning streaks and had built up a robust following in the MMA world. The day would certainly be one that Velasquez would remember for a long time. In just over a minute, Dos Santos secured the win by TKO, and Velasquez ended his winning streak and lost his title. It wasn't long before eager fans were wondering when the two men would meet again. These men got to meet for part 2 of their epic journey a little over a year later, on December of 2012. This time, Velasquez left no doubt in fans' minds. Velasquez came back strong with a unanimous decision victory, regaining his UFC heavyweight championship title. Of course, each great story needs a beginning, middle, and end. Velasquez and Dos Santos would fight one more time in 2013. The shocking knockout Dos Santos had pulled off in their first fight felt like a distant memory, as Velasquez battered Dos Santos for what felt like an agonizing but thrilling 25 minutes. Dos Santos held his own, remaining upright for most of the bout, but Velasquez closed in on Dos Santos early on, keeping him in a tight space, meaning Dos Santos had trouble extending on his punches and basically having to put all of his energy into defense. By the end of the fight, Dos Santos' face was covered with blood, and Velasquez finally won by TKO 3 minutes into the 5th round. Despite their history, the two have had nothing but respectful words to say about each other. Even when discussing their defeats, they mention the skill set of the other fighter, which just speaks to their good characters. In fact, it may shock you to find out that when Velasquez was arrested earlier this year, Dos Santos posted a public message of support.
Everything what I know about Cain Velasquez is that he's a great guy, he's a great person, a very serious athlete, he takes care of himself, of his family.
You guys can support this channel by leaving a like. That's a segue. You didn't see it coming inside of a documentary, but we still did it, all right? Subscribe and turn on post notifications if you're enjoying this. Let's get back into it. Velasquez was now a certified star, but he would only step into the cage 3 more times for the UFC, and 2 of those fights were losses. While everyone was looking forward to a rematch between Velasquez and Fabricio Werdum, after Velasquez suffered a defeat in 2015, fans were disappointed to learn that Velasquez would not be returning to challenge Stipe Miocic for the heavyweight title, but instead would be taking time off to have back surgery due to an injury that had been bothering him for quite some time. While this was a heavy blow, it did present the opportunity for the public to learn more about Velasquez's character. Around the same time as his back surgery, Velasquez announced his involvement with the brand new Mixed Martial Arts Athletes Association, along with Tim Kennedy, Donald Cerrone, TJ Dillashaw, and George St. Pierre, the GOAT. The purpose of the association was to even out revenue disparity between fighters in the UFC, as well as establish a collective bargaining agreement. During the conference call announcing the association, Velasquez revealed that he had an astounding 7 different surgeries since he began his professional career. While he didn't go into the details on the severity of his injuries, anything that sends someone to the operating room 7 times is no laughing matter, and Velasquez clearly wanted to make a difference for the culture as a whole. In a quote, Velasquez said, "It's not just for me, it's for the other UFC fighters who are going through the same thing and have gone through the same thing. For us, in the future, there is no post-retirement health plan. That's why I think it's important what we're doing now. Us UFC fighters coming together and having the rest of the UFC roster come together to make our lives better now and in the future." Sadly, it was an injury that ended Velasquez's UFC career. He stepped into the cage for the final time on February 19th, over 2 years since his last fight, only to be knocked out in less than 30 seconds. After the fight, it was revealed that just before he went down, Velasquez had suffered a serious knee injury. It was a frustrating turn of events for the star, who had gone into the octagon feeling healthy. Perhaps Dana White's criticism of AKA had some legs, and Velasquez had just been pushed too hard in training. This defeat marked the end of Velasquez's professional MMA career. He announced his retirement from the UFC later that year. While fans were sad to see him go, some thought it was best. The man had an incredible career and could now focus on spending time with his family. He had a baby son, and his retirement could allow him to focus on the small things, like watching family favorite, The Bachelor. But although Velasquez is a devoted family man who loves spending time at home, rest apparently wasn't on his mind when he announced his retirement. A few months before announcing his departure from the UFC, Velasquez had signed a multi-match agreement with the Mexican professional wrestling promotion, Lucha Libre. It's time for us to really get down to what happened with Velasquez earlier this year. On February 28, 2022, Cain Velasquez was arrested after a high-speed car chase through 3 Silicon Valley cities where he rammed another vehicle and fired several rounds of ammunition from a .40 caliber pistol towards it, ultimately hitting one of the passengers, a man named Paul Bender. Shortly after the incident, Velasquez was arrested and formally charged with attempted and gun assault charges. To the outside eye, it might appear that Velasquez is just another athlete who went off the rails because of some grudge. But is that what actually happened? What drove him to commit this act? The answer is more disturbing than you can imagine, because whatever you're thinking, it's way worse. The lead up to the event happened a week earlier. Police had been called to a daycare because there had been a report that the daycare owner's son, Harry Goulart, had one of the children at the daycare. After police spoke with the child, they determined that a had indeed taken place, and they arrested the 43-year-old Goulart. A few days later, he was released from custody without bail. Even though the district attorney strongly protested his release, Goulart was ordered to stay away from any child under the age of 14 and was instructed to wear an electronic monitoring bracelet. On the day of the attack, Goulart was apparently in the car with his mother and his stepfather, Paul Bender, on the way to get the electronic bracelet. Now, disgusting as Goulart's actions are, you may be wondering what prompted Velasquez to have such a strong response. The answer was soon made public. The child who by Goulart is a member of Velasquez's family. Once you've heard the reasoning, everything falls into place. Velasquez, a man inspired by his immigrant father, who was an All-American all through school, who worked his butt off to become an MMA icon, and is also a loving father and husband, isn't a cold-blooded killer. He's a man who loves his family and was rightfully outraged at the disgusting violation against someone he loves and the miscarriage of justice in letting the man who did it walk around in public as though it never happened. Now, of course, we're not in the business of condoning attempted murder, but if you were in Velasquez's position, would you do any different? Dana White mentioned a similar sentiment in response to hearing the news. Many of us say we would do the same if something like that ever happened to our family. Of course, no one can know how they would act until God forbid it happens, but let's be honest, most of us would want to do the same thing. Unfortunately, as understandable as Velasquez's actions were, they have made the whole situation 10 times more horrible. Now, along with processing the traumatic assault against a family member, Velasquez and his family will also have to go through the long, arduous court process, and, if convicted, Velasquez could be facing 20 years to life in prison. After the first refusal, there was a flood of support for Velasquez. Dozens of letters from the likes of Dana White and Kamaru Usman were written in support of Velasquez's character. #FreeCain trended on Twitter, and the sidewalk outside the courthouse was filled with people chanting that the wrong man had been put in jail. However, even this flood of support wouldn't change Judge Selena Brown's mind, and she refused bail again in May. Brown refused bail a second time, even though the bail was a proposed $1 million, and Velasquez offered to wear an electronic bracelet, remain inside at all times, and have someone monitor his behavior. A large reason for Brown's refusal may have been because of the statement from Bender, who was the one who made the claim that, quote, Cain Velasquez has no respect for human life. Bender, who has nerve damage and lost feeling in 3 of his fingers due to the accident, declared that he was convinced Velasquez would come after him and his family again to, quote, finish what he started. While Brown may have been swayed by Bender's words, it was another concern that seemed to prevent her from allowing Velasquez to be at home with his family. She seemed particularly disturbed by the public nature of Velasquez's actions. She spoke about the dangers that he presented to the public during the and the car chase and how it showed a, quote, reckless disregard for human life. The car chase was through city streets and there were several pedestrians nearby, so Brown's concerns are not completely unreasonable. But her refusal to budge means prolonged torment for his family and everyone who knows and loves Velasquez. Velasquez's hearing was set for June 10th. He's being charged with 1 count of attempted, 1 count of shooting at a motor vehicle, 3 counts of assault with a firearm, 3 counts of assault with a deadly weapon, 1 count of willfully discharging a firearm from a vehicle, and 1 count of carrying a loaded firearm with the intent to commit a felony. The attempted murder charge alone could land Velasquez in prison for 20 years to life. On June 6th, Harry Goularte pled not guilty to a felony charge of. His preliminary trial hearing will take place on September 20th in San Jose, California. If convicted, he could serve 8 years in prison or receive a $10,000 fine. So that's where things stand today. Velasquez has made a public statement thanking all of his supporters, but his future remains uncertain. Did he endanger public safety? Absolutely. But it's hard to blame him once you know the circumstances. Clearly, this was a situation that should have been dealt with in the criminal justice system. But sometimes we can't see straight when someone we love has been hurt. Since his arrest, many fighters have come forward with public support for Velasquez, with many saying they would have acted the same way, including Marvin Vettori, Jake Shields, and Ronda Rousey. Whether it will make any difference in what happens with Velasquez, only time will tell.